Hey guys, it's Ryan from The Dad Show. Before we get into today's episode, I'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor. Have you been looking for a way to get on the water for some family fun? If so, please go visit my friends at Blue Springs Boat Company located in Kingston, Tennessee. Family owned and operated since 1988, Blue Springs Boat Company is the largest authorized Bennington and Regal dealership serving the East Tennessee area. They offer new and used boats, have a full parts department, and a certified service department on hand to help you with all your boating needs. They're proud to be your family's boat dealer. Let Blue Springs Boat Company help you find the right boat for you and your family. Visit them online at www.bluespringsboats.com or call 865-376-1472. Now, let's get to the podcast.
Welcome to the Dad Show Podcast, a show all about impacting, empowering, inspiring, and uplifting information to become a better dad, husband, man, and mentor. And now, your host, Ryan Ladd.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Dad Show. I want to thank you for listening and for watching. I'd like to ask that you would engage with us on all social media at the Dad Show Podcast, as well as online at thedadshowpodcast.com. This is Thanksgiving week. Thanksgiving's coming up Thursday. Hope everybody's got their grocery shopping done and got their family gatherings planned. The Dad Show will be running a Black Friday sale starting early Friday morning on our website at www.thedadshowpodcast.com. We'll have deals on our shirts and hats and stickers as well. So I'd like to ask that you would visit us on Friday to check out those deals. So the title of today's podcast is No Coincidences. Today's podcast is mostly going to be in reference to our journey with Kennedy and Lincoln and their treatment and diagnosis of their rare genetic disease. So I'd like to give just a little bit of tidbit on that so everybody's familiar and so you got a little context. Kennedy and Lincoln is mine and my wife Allie's two kids. Kennedy is 6 and Lincoln is 3. They both have a rare genetic condition called MPS I Hurler Syndrome. Basically, they're missing an enzyme to break down the bad trash of the body for the body to be able to dispose of it. So if you don't have any treatment, then that trash just builds up, and most of the kids that don't go through any treatment pass away between the ages of 5 to 10 years of age. So when Kennedy and Lincoln were diagnosed, we were gave 3 choices. One was to do nothing. And just like I said, that they would probably pass away between the ages of 5 to 10, to do a man-made enzyme that would help break down that trash, but it still wouldn't pass the blood-brain barrier. So the brain would still eventually go brain dead, and then major organs would still, and the kids would still pass away a little bit later in life. But the best chance at a better life for them and a longer life was to do a bone marrow transplant. So my wife and I prayed about it, and that's what both of our kids have received, was bone marrow transplant at Cincinnati Children's Hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio. So MPS I occurs in about 1 in 100,000 births. I'm not exactly sure what the count is to now, but I believe it's in the United States. There's less than 1,000 kids that have MPS I, and so we've got 2 kids with MPS I. Kennedy is now 6. She received her transplant at 11 months of age. She was diagnosed at 9 months of age due to her having the disease. After we noticed that she had a gibbous on her spine. That's how basically we found the disease. We knew that Kennedy had the disease. So our next child, Lincoln, we knew to test him at birth. And so Lincoln was diagnosed at 2 weeks of age and transplanted at 3 months of age. So right before Kennedy was born, my dad and my brother and myself started going to a men's Bible study. Growing up, we went to church on Sunday, maybe some Sunday nights and maybe some Wednesday nights, and went to Bible school growing up and stuff of that nature, but never did we really dive into a men's Bible study. And, we were Christians. We gave our lives to Christ and everything, but never had we went to a men's Bible study. I don't know if y'all been able to catch episode 1 with Willie Galahar and Neil Crass, and the story with their kids and the car accident. But Willie and Neil were the teachers, the leaders of this men's group. And so we would go every Monday night and, just growing closer and closer to God. This was right before Kennedy was born, and the Bible study carried on and on and through her birth, but it was still before she was diagnosed. So during this time too, my wife and I decided to rededicate our lives to the Lord. We just felt that we hadn't, lived a life very, very pleasing to God. So we wanted to rededicate our lives. I think Kennedy was actually born at this time. And so basically the moral of the story is that we were growing closer and closer to God, for numerous things, but obviously God was building us up because he knew what was about to come in the future. And so we had just got the the diagnosis of Kennedy, and we hadn't really told too many people. And so we're sitting at church, and we went to, my family and I, we'd go to church every Sunday, and so there was a family sitting behind us that we had never seen before, and my wife was holding Kennedy, and the whole service, Kennedy was, holding her head, and she was looking at who was behind her and stuff of that nature, just a precious little baby. And the couple behind us, we didn't know them, they didn't know us, and didn't obviously know what we was going through and what we had just been faced with. But the dad, after the church service was over, leaned up and told us, said, "I don't know what it is about that little girl, but there is absolutely something special about her. She's going to do amazing things." And so, us catching this information from the dad and what we had just been diagnosed with, and it was very emotional and overwhelming. And I'm sure he thought that he had said something wrong, but just emotions came over us, and we held it together, and we just felt that that was God touching us through this person that we had never seen, and honestly, I've never seen him since that day at church. So just a complete God moment there. So, like I said, Kennedy and Lincoln were diagnosed and treated in Cincinnati, Ohio, at Cincinnati Children's. So going through Kennedy's transplant, we were not able to eat in the room. So there was a one room designated on the bone marrow transplant floor there where all the parents would go eat. Sometimes it'd be a few dads in there, sometimes it'd be a few moms, sometimes it'd be a few grandparents, but that's where the families would go eat at. And so I met another dad there. I'm not going to tell his name because I don't want to, put too much information on other people out there. And had really got close to this guy. There was a facility on site there where they would allow patient families to go work out, a small little gym. So we was able to go work out, and it was a good release of the stress of what our kids were going through. But he got to tell me how his daughter was diagnosed. So his daughter, the daughter's grandmother, and his wife had all went on a cruise. And really about every patient that has some kind of genetic condition going on has either, facial features or body structure or something that is all similar and related to the disease. So his daughter and, his wife and the grandmother were on this cruise ship, and another family on the cruise ship had a child with the Fanconi's anemia. So they walk up to this man's wife and grandmother and say, I don't know 100% how the conversation went, but basically, have you had your daughter tested for this disease? And they were like, no, not at all. Why? And so evidently the other family had told them all about it, and said our child has this features, and your daughter looks like this. I would just have her tested just in case. So, you can imagine, for one, I'm thinking, I don't think I could walk up to another family and be like, that I don't know, and be like, you might want to have your daughter tested for this, and then be on the receiving end of that, of their family, like, these people are crazy. Like, why are you coming up to me telling me this stuff? So, but they took it to heart, and when they got back off the cruise ship, they made a appointment with their local doctor, and the doctor just blew it off and was like, "There's no way she's got it. I know this is, the percentage and the rates is way too low to be able to for her to test positive for it." And but he said, give you peace of mind, we'll test her anyways. Well, lo and behold, the test came back positive, and she had Fanconi's anemia, exactly what the other family on the cruise ship. So that's how his daughter was diagnosed. So going on through transplant, we had Kennedy was released from the hospital after her successful transplant, but we still had to live in Cincinnati for, I think it was close to 6 months is how much longer we had to stay in Cincinnati, because we had to go back to the hospital for her treatments, about 3 to 4 times a week initially. And then I think it went down to 3 times a week. And the days that we weren't going to the hospital, you had nurses coming into the home to do certain things and procedures that they wouldn't allow the parents to do. And so, at certain times, like the children's museum, there wouldn't be hardly anybody there. And so this particular weekend, my brother and his family and his wife and, his 2 daughters had come up to visit us, because we hadn't been home at this time in about 7 months. We'd been living in Cincinnati already. And so they came up, and we decided to go to the children's museum. And so we're walking around, and unfortunately my wife is at certain times a pack rat, and whenever we go somewhere, she's got to take everything and the kitchen sink just in case you need to wash your hands. So we're walking through the museum, and at the time, Kennedy had an NG tube, which goes in through your nose, and it just goes down your esophagus and just sets in your stomach, but it's taped to the side of your face. And what you do is, it's got a cap on the end of it, and you just, cap it off when you're not giving her any feedings. But, this is basically how she was getting her breast milk and her calories and her food, was through this tube, because the chemo makes you have some terrible things. And so she did not feel like eating at all. And plus the tube's going down your esophagus, so there's something else there that, you can't, you got a tube going down and you just don't feel like eating. We had a stroller that, was covered. It's basically the same concept as what you would normally pull behind a bicycle, but it was in stroller form. And so I peeled the cover off. Kennedy's crying. So she's in that stroller, and like I said, my wife's kind of a little bit of a pack rat. And so the tube's tucked under a whole bunch of that stuff. How it got there, I'm not too sure. But when I went to pick Kennedy up, the tube ripped the tape off her face, and it wasn't stuck to anything, but it just ripped out of her nose, and she started just wailing. And you can imagine being in a museum how quiet it is, and she is crying at the top of her lungs and would not stop. I mean, obviously, how ripping a Band-Aid off. Imagine, that coming off of your cheek, and then this tube coming out of. Oh, it was terrible. But on the upside of that, we called the doctor immediately and was like, this is what's happened. But my wife, she's like, I've just got this hankering feeling that she's going to start eating. Can we just come back tomorrow? She's already had a couple feedings today. If she doesn't eat, we'll come back tomorrow and we'll have another tube placed. But can I have tonight to see if she'll start eating? And so they were weary of it, but they said yes. And if she doesn't eat by tonight, either bring her into the ER or just come to the doctor's office to clinic tomorrow and let us know, and we'll take care of it. And she started eating everything. She wouldn't stop eating. And they were just floored that, a patient that wouldn't eat, that she just started eating after that. So that was God just saying, this tube needs to come out. And this is how it's going to come out, because the doctors aren't going to let you take it out because she's getting good feedings through it. but this is how it's going to come out, and she's going to start eating. There's no coincidence that I ripped her tube out and got the Dad of the Year award there, for making my look like I just beat my child in the middle of a museum. Is that how bad she's crying and, just wailing over everything. So it was a terrible experience, but a great blessing at the same time. So fast forward a little bit to when we went to Cincinnati for Lincoln's transplant. We were going to a park to have a last family day because at the time, like I said, Lincoln was 3 months whenever he was transplanted. So that would have made Kennedy 3 years old. And 3-year-olds carry a ton of germs. So you really don't want them around a baby anyways. And then also a baby that's going to go through harsh chemo treatment to kill off all, any immune system that they have at that time to receive the bone marrow transplant. You just don't want a 3-year-old child in the room. So basically what would have to happen is that we wouldn't be able to be a family again, a family of 4, until Lincoln received his transplant and started getting the immune system back. So I would stay at the apartment with Kennedy, and Allie would stay with Lincoln at the hospital, and then we would kind of switch in and out so that I could still be with Lincoln a little bit. So anyways, right before we went into the hospital to have our last day of being a family of 4, we go to a local park there in Cincinnati. And it's a really, really neat little park. It's called Summit Park. If you're ever in the Cincinnati area, go to Blue Ash and go to Summit Park. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. So there's restaurants and a little ice cream area, or an ice cream store that overlooks the play area, so you can sit out on the patio and watch the kids play and all that. So we go up to get ice cream. And my mom was in town at this time also helping us out as well with the kids. And so she gets her ice cream, and I believe she's holding Lincoln, and it's kind of community seating. So she just goes and sits down, and me and Allie and Kennedy get our ice cream, and we go meet up with her. Well, at this time, she's kind of kicking up conversation with other people at the table. And, me and my wife, we've got a strong kind of Southern accent. And so we sit down, and, being up north a little bit there, and they were like, "You guys aren't from around here." They don't say y'all, they say you guys. And we was like, no. And we told them, and they ended up having a son with diabetes. And so they were familiar with the hospital. And so we just made that kind of connection and had general conversation, nothing at all. And, then they ended up leaving, and so a few minutes later, I'm facing like the parking lot area, and my wife's back's to the parking lot, and the lady comes back to us, and she brings us a card, and she said, "We tried to pull out of the parking lot, but we couldn't pull out of the parking lot. God put it on our hearts to come back and wanted to give you our information. We literally just built a brand new house a mile down the road. Our kids are grown and out of the house. It's just me and my husband. We've got a fully furnished basement with everything. If you ever need anywhere to stay, you come and call it home." And, for a stranger to open up their house to us, who were strangers at the time, there's no other explanation other than God putting it on their hearts to come and tell us that. And God putting us, after buying our ice cream, to sit down, and we could have sat anywhere but sat with this couple. That's no coincidence whatsoever. And so we had an apartment in Cincinnati, and so we didn't go stay with them, but we just kept in touch with them. And Kennedy wanted to trick or treat. Lincoln was transplanted in August, so we were still in the hospital with Lincoln during Halloween. We don't know anybody in Cincinnati, nowhere to go. So we just contacted them and was like, "Do you care if we bring Kennedy over to go trick-or-treating in your neighborhood?" And they were so nice and so receiving of it, and let Kennedy go trick-or-treating. And they even had her some candy there. And it was just a true blessing to have them there. And And so we kind of just kept in touch with them. And during Christmas time, we were stuck in Cincinnati and didn't have any decorations or anything. We thought we were going to get to come home, but they wouldn't let us come home for Christmas. They brought us a tree and brought us, some Christmas decorations so we could decorate up our apartment for the kids for Christmas. And it was truly a blessing. They even actually, before their family came over on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, I'm not 100% sure which one it was, but they knew Lincoln's immunity wasn't great. So they cooked a whole nother meal and had us and the kids over to eat a Christmas meal at their house before then. And so, like I said, they were a true blessing, and just we kept in touch with them. And so now we have to go to Cincinnati pretty periodically, and we kept in touch with them, and that's where we stay every time we go back to Cincinnati. And really and truthfully, they have become Kennedy and Lincoln's grandparents. They love them to death, and Kennedy and Lincoln love them to death, and they just been a true blessing to our family. And so we wanted to go to Minnesota for to get a second opinion about Kennedy's spine. She's going to have to have spine surgery on her gibbous. She has 3 vertebrae that form a 76-degree curvature in her lower spine. So we're going to have surgery to correct that. So backing up just a little bit, when we came home from Kennedy, like I said, there is no cure for MPS 1. So we created the Kennedy Ladd Foundation. And what the Kennedy Ladd Foundation, the focus on it is to raise money for a cure, and then also to provide iPads for kids going into transplant. The kids, after basically it's around 2 to 2.5 years of age, their bodies are deteriorated so bad that they probably won't transplant them due to that it's not really going to do any good for the kids. A 2-year-old or under in the hospital, for one, they don't feel like doing anything. And number 2, there's not really much for a 2-year-old to do in the hospital. I mean, I can remember trying to get Kennedy and Lincoln, both of them, to get out on the floor and crawl. They had a mat there that we would put a sheet over, and we'd put it down on the floor so that they could crawl or play, and they just didn't feel like doing anything. And so that's where we had got Kennedy an iPad, and we'd got Lincoln an iPad with our own money. They were just absolutely the best thing that could have possibly been. And it gives the kids games to play, or they can download Mickey Mouse and watch episodes of Mickey Mouse, because there's not always something on the TV for them to watch. They can FaceTime family back home and keep in touch with them that way. And also the main factor of it is, whenever they're getting an IV, or like Lincoln, he had a port, and so he was constantly getting accessed in his port. In any kind of procedure where, that's going to be scary for a kid, they would be crying. And then the second that we would put the iPad up and play Mickey Mouse or something, their attention would just go to that iPad, and then they could do whatever to the kids, and they didn't care at all because they were watching the iPad. And so by our experience with it, that's my wife and I were like, this is going to give relief to the parents and the kids that are going through transplant, and help them out tremendously. So that's the focus of the Kennedy Ladd Foundation. So our biggest fundraiser for the year is a golf tournament. It's always played in the fall, and every year it's on a Saturday, and we always go on Friday and start putting up signs and going ahead and get the course ready for everything, because the players are going to show up about 6:00 in the morning, and it's an all-day event. So we try to do everything Friday night that we can. So I'm walking across the course, and I see a shiny coin laying on next to the cart path, and I pick it up and I flip it over, and it's a ball mark, and there is a picture on the front of it, but it looks really worn, and I'm like, nobody's going to miss this ball mark whatsoever. And it didn't look to be anything sentimental. You could buy these out the store, basically order them anywhere. And so I was like, I'm not going to, throw it back on the ground and litter the course. When I get back to the pro shop, I'll just toss it in the trash. No big deal at all. So I put it in my pocket, put the signs up, finished doing that for the night. I get home and I'm emptying my pockets of everything, and there's that ball mark. And I was like, man, I need to throw this away. But, in the back of my head, I had that voice saying, well, that might be somebody's. Just take it to the golf course tomorrow and put it in lost and found. And, if somebody's looking for it and it's sentimental value, then they'll go to lost and found and find it. So we go through the day. We got our morning tee times off, no problem at all. Made the announcements and told them everything about the foundation, where the money's going to, and, an update on Kennedy and Lincoln, and we're trying to get to Minnesota. And so the morning goes off and still trying to take care of everything. And so our afternoon round's about to go off, and we're doing the same spiel before they play, an update on Kennedy and Lincoln, the foundation money's going to this, how much we raised the years prior. Thank you to our sponsors, and about Kennedy, we're trying to get to Minnesota to get a second opinion on her spine. And there's a really good surgeon, pediatric surgeon up there that's, I think for like 30 something years have performed surgery on MPS 1 Hurler patients like Kennedy and Lincoln. So after our announcements, the players start taking off to their holes, and my cousin comes up to me and he's like, man, there's somebody that wants to meet you. And I'm like, okay, and so he takes me over to this guy, and this guy's like, looks about 6'6", 6'8". And so I'm looking up at him, and he introduced himself, and his name was Joe Nathan. And the name Joe Nathan didn't really mean anything to me at the time. And he said, I used to pitch for the Minnesota Twins. And we talked a little bit more, and then it hit me. And I was like, the Minnesota Twins. You played for the Minnesota Twins? And he's like, yeah. He told me the seasons that he'd played and the years. So I pull out the ball mark, and it's a Minnesota Twins ball mark that I'd picked up the day prior that I was going to throw away, that I was going to throw in lost and found. And I said, well, I picked up this ball mark yesterday, next to the cart path on number 5. And I think that you will get more value out of it than what I will. And I said, I was going to throw it away, going to put it in lost and found. I said, so you go ahead and take it and do with it what you want. And he said, hold on. You found that where? And I told him, I said, next to number 5 tee box. And he pulls out his golf glove, and that Minnesota Twins ball mark was his ball mark to his golf glove. It was missing, and he had lost it the day prior. So it was no coincidence that I was supposed to meet this man. So Joe had said that he wanted to get us in touch with the Minnesota Twins to hopefully do some fundraising with the Minnesota Twins and the Kennedy Light Foundation to help us out. And I was like, man, that'd be awesome. A true blessing. The Minnesota Twins is a huge organization. Their outreach, I said, even if, monetary value isn't there, just the awareness for MPS 1 to help us, get the word out there, to get the disease out there would be tremendous. And so we finally did get to Minnesota, and I kept in touch with Joe and with the Twins organization. And so another step further on that, our family in Cincinnati had a friend in Minnesota. And so he hooked us up with this friend in Minnesota. So come to find out, the friend of our family in Cincinnati had managed the front office for the Minnesota Twins basically during the same time of when Joe Nathan was playing for the Minnesota Twins. So they ended up knowing each other, and we was able to make that connection. Like I said, no coincidence that we were supposed to meet the family in Cincinnati. We were supposed to meet Joe Nathan, and we were also supposed to meet the other friend in Minnesota. And so we were supposed to do some fundraising with the Minnesota Twins on, this year, but obviously with COVID and everything, we decided to wait till the 2021 season. So if you get where I'm going here, there's no coincidences in all this. This is all God's work. This is all God's timing, and this is all part of God's plan. It's no coincidence that you are listening to this podcast or you're watching it on our YouTube channel. It's no coincidence. You need to hear these things that are happening so you realize what's happening in your life, that it's not coincidences that's happening in your life. I'll give you one more, and this one's even, bigger than what I've already said. But my wife and I, since our kids' diagnosis and treatment, had never been on just a get together with her and I. And so I called her. I've been trying to get her to go to the beach. And she's like, I don't want to go to the beach. And I've been trying to get her on a cruise. And she'd said no. And then I said, well, what about a trip to New York? And she said no. So I tried to, obviously to get her to go on a trip. And everything that I told her, she shot down. But she agreed that we needed to go on a trip. But everything that I'd said, she'd shot down. She just didn't want to leave the kids. We'd never left the kids. We'd go on a date and go out to eat or go to a movie, but we would always be back. We'd never left the kids overnight. And so finally I'm just like, I get this feeling, saying we need to go to New York. We need to go to New York. We need to go to New York. And I keep fighting it off. I'm like, she doesn't want to go. There's no reason in booking it. You need to go to New York, Ryan. No, she doesn't want to go. There's no reason. I'm not booking it. Finally, I'm like, okay, there's a voice. There's something telling me. These thoughts keep popping in my head. Let's go to New York. So I just book it. I book everything. And I book our flights, book our hotel. And I called my wife and I said, we're going to New York. And she was like, what? As you can imagine. And I said, yeah, we're going to go to New York. And this is the dates that we're going. So I say we're going. It's booked. We can't get our money back. So either I'm going by myself or you're going with me, one or the other. And so long story short, we get on the plane together and we go to New York. Well, I'd never been to New York, and so, but she had, and so she'd done a few of the touristy things. And one of the touristy things I wanted to do was go stand out on the plaza for the Today Show and see all that. We had our friend that makes all our shirts and our hats. She made us a banner, basically, we had designed it saying, help us bring awareness to Kennedy and Lincoln for MPS 1, just trying to raise awareness. And so we got there Wednesday. We really hadn't slept. We were busy trying to get everything together for the kids and make sure everything's taken care of and all that junk. So I think we'd had like an hour sleep. We had to be at the airport at like 4:30 in the morning. So we got in bed at like, I don't know, 12 o'clock, late Wednesday night. So we were planning on sleeping in, Thursday because we'd stayed up so late and had, not much sleep the night before and had been running around New York all day. And we're like, we'll just sleep in and we'll go to today's show on Friday. Well, Thursday morning, we wake up at like 6 o'clock in the morning and we couldn't go back to sleep. And so he's like, well, we're up. Let's just go. And so we get ready. We head out the door and we walk there to Today Show Plaza and get out there. And it's really, really cold that morning. So there's not a ton of people out there. So we get really good spots. And we actually were supposed to be on for the shout outs. And evidently our cut didn't make it for the shout outs. So lo and behold, it was ambush makeover day. And I'm kind of partial to my wife, and she's still pretty young. And I don't think that she needed a makeover whatsoever. But, they come out in the crowd and they're talking to all these women, and they choose my wife for ambush makeover. So we get to go inside, and also prior to going to New York, we'd planned on handing out some little postcards, basically telling about the foundation, Kennedy and Lincoln, and their disease. Just trying to bring awareness. And so we was able to go inside and talk to Today Show people, and and give them their card about Kennedy and Lincoln, tell them about Kennedy and Lincoln. And for the women and that's having the makeover, they right before they reveal them, they kind of, give some before pictures and tell a little bit about them and their family and what they're kind of going through and so on and so forth. And so Allie was able to tell them on national TV about MPS1, about Kennedy and Lincoln, and this is going on national TV. Just two hillbillies from Tennessee getting on national TV to be able to tell about MPS1. And so my wife comes out and she looks beautiful. And, and then I get emotional and I start crying. And I don't want this to sound bad, but I'm really not crying. They had us blindfolded. And so I'm crying because my wife does look beautiful. But what I'm even more emotional about is the fact that I'm hearing, and while I've got this blindfold on, I'm hearing over the studio. I didn't know what Allie had been able to say and what they would put on national television, but I'm hearing my wife describe Kennedy and Lincoln and their disease and what we've been through and how long we spent in the hospital and all this stuff that we had just printed on. Basically, print the disease name, MPS1 Hurler Syndrome, help us find a cure on a poster to hold up that maybe we may get a 1 second shot, of them scanning the crowd and see our poster for the Today Show. Going from that to now my wife's on national TV and I'm on national TV and she's being able to tell the whole world about MPS1. And so when I take the blindfold off and see her and, the emotions of hearing that before, and, I just started crying. And so then my cry for her, we get, it just kind of goes viral a little bit, and, between Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and a lot of news outlets had picked it up. The Daily Mail had picked it up, and in our local news station had picked it up. And whenever we got back from New York, they had us on here to tell what about the Today Show. And then even more than that, they didn't really want to know about the Today Show. They wanted to know more about Kennedy and Lincoln's disease. And so we was able to be on TV again to tell about their disease. And you can't tell me that this is coincidences that have happened. This is a plan, a bigger guided plan by much bigger power. So you're here listening to this, or maybe you're watching this on YouTube for a reason. It's no coincidence. You're hearing my family's journey and examples of when God showed up and showed out for a reason. So don't just blow it off and be like, "Oh, I was at the right place at the right time." No, you weren't. And don't say, "Oh, this happens to Ryan because he's perfect," or "this happens to his family because they walk a straight line and they're perfect." No, we're not perfect. We fail every day. And before I drew closer to God, I was failing multiple times a second intentionally. And I was walking down a terrible path. But I realized what mattered and what I needed to do to straighten my walk with God. But I still waver. I still fail multiple times a day, every single day of the week. We try to walk straight, but we don't. We fail. Everybody fails. Nobody's perfect. So I don't care if you're at your lowest of lows or you're at your highest of highs. You're still going to fail. But just know you're good enough. God loves you. God's proud of you. And he wants the best for you and your life. He showed you these examples through our life today to give you hope for what's coming in your future. So stay positive. Look to God for answers. And just know that God loves you and that I love you. I hope that you have an amazing Thanksgiving with your family. And if you don't have family out there, find some friends or just show love, show kindness. In the end, that wins. And yes, this is coming from a male figure, but that wins. Kindness and love and compassion to family or not to family. Because I can tell you, because there's a bunch of people that's close to me in my family that doesn't show my family love and compassion. But there's a lot of people that you've heard through these stories that show, and there's more. This is all that I was trying to squeeze into an hour podcast. There's more, tons more of other families that's not family, that love our kids, that love Allie and I, show us love and compassion, want to be their grandparents. So please, go out in the world, smile, and stay positive. If you go to one person that's looking down and gloomy and you smile and you say, hey, how are you? Or hey, how was your day? They may not show it, but it's going to cheer them up just a little bit. So imagine what you could do to your family at home, or your close friends, or your close family that may not live with you. If you can change somebody's life just by smiling and saying, hey, how are you on the street? Imagine how your words and your attitude and your actions can affect those so close to you in your home. So go out in the world and smile, stay positive, show love, show compassion, and show kindness. You'll win every time. I would like to ask that you would subscribe, rate, and review this podcast so that they'll share it with others. If you'd like to hear more about Kennedy and Lincoln's story, you can visit Kennedy and Lincoln Lads Prayer Group on Facebook, where we try to update about their story. If you'd like to engage with myself or contact myself, you can do so at the Dad Show Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Or you can visit our website at www.thedadshowpodcast.com. Fill out the contact form. Just know that I'm proud of you and I love you. And I hope that you have an amazing Thanksgiving. God bless you and thank you for your time.
Thank you for listening to the Dad Show Podcast. Please like, review, and subscribe.